both of the Chargers coordinators had glowing praise for Derwin James, and he rewarded them on Wednesday, making the biggest play of mandatory minicamp day 2.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier. And today's episode is brought to you by Odoo. Great organizations win because operations matter, and that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. David, what do we got today?
Minicamp day 2, got to hear from both of the Chargers coordinators, both offensive and defensive, and just getting the little nuggets, hearing about Hart and Tarheeb still and how they're doing and how they're growing. Also, Mike McDaniel, some of the reasoning behind why Justin Herbert is working with footwork and some of the throwing program things, and Derwin James doing what Derwin James does, making plays.
Yeah, and he is going to be, or is basically being hugely rewarded for that with a new contract extension. But yeah, I have to get into the news of the day from mandatory minicamp, which is basically Justin Herbert actually throwing in team drills and Derwin James making the play of the day defensively. Deion Henley misses out after a forced fumble against Trey Harris per Eric Smith. But Derwin James, according to Smith, accounted for the splash play of his own when he intercepted Trey Lance on a deep pass in 7-on-7 work at Wednesday's mandatory minicamp practice. And we saw yesterday it was the rookies that were making the big plays. Today, the biggest stories coming out of practice are coming from the veterans and arguably the two biggest faces of your franchise right now on each side of the ball. And nothing, as far as, hey, Derwin James getting a pick, he's going to have a big year. But more, I think you heard the coordinators talking about on both sides of the ball. Even your offensive coordinator is impressed, right, by Derwin James. But this is him doing kind of what he needs to do now. Like with the amount of money he is getting paid, he is going to have to go out there and be up there with the best safeties in the league. And I think part of that is more playmaking, which last year he did at a higher level.
That's 100% correct. With Derwin James, we know it's tantalizing the amount of talent that he possesses because he can do so many different things for you, and he can erase a lot of things. He can cover up a lot of things. He is so effective close to the football, though. He can really, really affect the quarterback by rushing. He can cover your tight ends. He's a great tackler. He's really, really good in run support. He just understands and has the innate feel for when they're going to snap the ball, and he jumps it and he gets in the backfield so quickly. Derwin James is such a talented football player, but you're right. Expectations are now sky high. I mean, I think they have kind of always been, but this is the second time that the Chargers have made him the highest paid player at his position in the NFL. So they're doing that because they expect that same level of performance to continue for Derwin James. And this is just a good sign of him saying, hey, I'm still that same guy. I'm still going to go out here and work my tail off, and I'm going to continue to make plays and make big plays for my team.
And I think the biggest thing is there's not a ton of star power on this defense, right? Like, we know how good the players are, right? And guys will be higher in our regard than maybe what the national media thinks about it. But, like, when you are one of those guys, because Derwin James is unquestionably the biggest star on the defense, you have to be able to make plays like this. And him doing this in mandatory minicamp might not seem like a lot, but I think it's very, it shows a ton of what makes him so impressive, which is, this is not what he's best known for. He's not best known for intercepting the football, right? Like, he's never really been a big interception guy. He tied his career high last year with 3, had the game-sealing interception against the Chiefs in the second matchup. But for a guy who is best near the line of scrimmage, he's still the guy making the big play, even when the pads aren't on, and I think that is worth noting. But it was great hearing what his coaches think about him, including Chris O'Leary, because he was asked about what his role is going to be in the Chris O'Leary defense, and Chris O'Leary knows what he does best, and he's going to try to stick with that.
Yes, he absolutely will. And he also said that you want 11 Derwin James. So, like, the answer to that is yes, we'd love to do more and all that. But I think at the end of the day, my job is to get our players in position to do what they're best at. And if you're going to put a scale to it, like, what's he best at? Is he best at that? Like blitzing, owning the perimeter. He's, to me, the best in the world at doing that, so we're going to put him in the position as much as we possibly can. And that's something that we saw a lot last year, right? Another second-team All-Pro selection at the slot cornerback position, the nickel, whatever you want to call it, close to the line of scrimmage, where he's able to make those impact plays. He is so incredibly dangerous and very, very special in that part of the field. So seems like it's going to be a little bit more of the same for Derwin James, and that's not a bad thing.
Well, let's be honest, right? Like, this is part of what you bring in Chris O'Leary for, because know Derwin James and what he does best. And if you're going to change defensive coordinators, because you have to find the guy that helped him do it to begin with, right? Because that is what Chris O'Leary was. Chris O'Leary taught Derwin James how to play the nickel position with Jesse Minter in 2024 when he was the safeties coach. So you can't think that this hiring of Chris O'Leary doesn't have to do with, just like Justin Herbert, right? Why did the Chargers hire Mike McDaniel? To get more out of Justin Herbert. We're going to talk about exactly why he thinks that, right? Why do you hire Chris O'Leary? Not to the same extent. You hire Chris O'Leary to do better with Derwin James than someone like Brandon Staley did when he tried to do too much with him, right? And keep it close to what Jesse Minter had him doing, which is doing what he does best near the line of scrimmage, playing a super physical game, getting pressure on the quarterback, and then also being able to mix it up at times, versatility-wise. Okay, is he covering? Is he going to be blitzing right now? And that's what Chris O'Leary also said, which is like, we might do a little bit of subtle differences. We might have him playing more to the wide side of the field, or maybe we don't actually have to primarily do that. We'll keep him on the short side as well. And all of the kind of things that come along with the nuances of the defense and how his defense will be different than Jesse Minter's. But it also wasn't the only thing, that he wasn't the only coach that was talking about Derwin. But I do think that for this and what his role is going to be, it is a little bit hard at times. That's what Brandon Staley found out, right? Where it's like, if you're trying to use him to put out fires in a bunch of different places, he can do a lot of things at a really high level, but he is better when he does have a more singular focus and can kind of play fast, which is what Derwin James, and the athlete and specimen and alien that he is where he's going to be at his best, right? And then all of that kind of starts from the same spot, which is why he's been an all-pro at that spot 2 years in a row. But Mike McDaniel also got in on the praise of Derwin James, because we've heard nonstop, David, that these two, from the moment Mike McDaniel walked in, have been trash-talking each other, but there is a mutual respect, and Mike McDaniel puts him kind of in the highest echelon of people that, he's had in his teams or he's seen up close and personal.
Two highly talented people in their respective fields in football, and this is what Mike McDaniel had to say about Derwin James. It's taken one off season to put him on an exceptional list that's few and far between for me of the top players that have been on it, that I've been on a team with, because by definition, elite tackler, mover, can run, can hit, does all of those things, but he makes people around him better just by the way he attacks the day. And that is so true. And we know that of Derwin James, right? Just a guy that is all energy. When he steps into a room, he's one of those guys that's magnetic. You can't help but pay attention to him because of the presence, the aura that he has. That's Derwin James to a T. And it just seems like it didn't take very much time for Mike McDaniel to understand that, respect that, and appreciate how amazing Derwin James is in a multitude of different ways.
Yeah, and he does, right? And the guys he compared him to, because he was asked to kind of follow up on, like, what is that short list of guys, right, that are in kind of the most elite upper echelon of players. And he brought up someone like John Lynch, because he was, with the Broncos at one point, and then talks about, Fred Warner. If you're talking about guys who can play exceptionally well, but do so much more than just their individual job to make the team better, those are the guys you want to get compared to, right? Also brought up London Fletcher and his time with Washington. Like, these are the kind of guys that aren't just good at what they do, but can actually elevate everyone else around him. And that is the stratosphere that Derwin James is in, with the best players of those defenses, because it is good to be able to just do what you need to do great. But, when you hear Mike McDaniel say, hey, I think the energy that Derwin brings every day inspires people, like, you as a coaching staff, you need the new guys that you're coaching to be able to buy in. It's a lot easier to do when you have someone like Derwin James who is going to make sure that message gets across, or
to make standard bearer.
Exactly. And to make sure that, there is someone they can look at all times and is not just doing what he's supposed to do, but showing the fruits of what you're trying to, of the labor that you're putting in right now when you're installing this new defense, and for Mike McDaniel, this new offense, where it's like, hey, You want to see what it looks like? Jim Harbaugh said it his first day as Chargers coach. Watch Derwin James, see what he's doing. And so for this new coaching staff to have him, I'm not surprised that he's been appreciated by both sides, because having someone like that is a huge advantage. But we also got to hear that Justin Herbert was throwing again on 7-on-7s at Wednesday's practice. We're going to talk about that and the master plan that Mike McDaniel has cooking, and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Throughout the NHL Finals, every shift mattered, every moment was intense, and everything came down to execution when the pressure was at its highest. And just like athletes have to be ready to perform when the puck drops, a lot of guys want the same sense of readiness and confidence in their own lives too. That's where Rougiette comes in. Rougiette offers modern, performance-focused treatments designed to help you be ready when it matters, and their top option, Rougiette Ready, is a fast-acting, clinically formulated treatment that comes in a simple mint that dissolves under your tongue, and it's designed for convenience with fast absorption and effects that can begin in 15 minutes and may last up to 36 hours. They also offer Go Long, which is formulated to support both performance and control for longer-lasting needs. It's all about helping guys feel prepared and confident and in control, and that's what it's about. Especially in the playoffs, readiness isn't an option. Confidence is super important, and for a lot of guys, the idea of being ready at the right moment carries over into everyday life as well. Head to Rougiette.com/LockedOnNHL and get 15% off your ED treatment. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnNHL for 15% off Rougiette Performance Medicine for Men. Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems and that were never designed to work together to begin with, and one app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them actually talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform. From sales and accounting to inventory and marketing, everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of just managing the software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about everyone working towards the same goal. And that's true in sports just like it is in business. And one thing you heard Mike McDaniel talk about today, and Chris O'Leary, and we're going to talk about, is everyone moving in the right direction. A new offense doesn't get installed unless you have all the coaches and all the players moving in the right direction at the same time, because great organizations win because operations matter. And that's why you should get Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon. One thing, David, that we got to see on Wednesday, or hear about at least, was Justin Herbert throwing in team drills, which between Madison Beer's, international tour and Justin Herbert sitting out to work on his footwork and, to work on the footwork and also to stay fresh, we haven't seen him, right, throw the football to his teams in a team setting until Wednesday and, over a month. And it is a really different experience with Justin Herbert that we're seeing, especially this time of year, but there is a method to the madness. But it was also interesting hearing, Mike McDaniel talk about kind of why they're doing things the way they're doing and why we didn't see him throwing in 7-on-7s until right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. It was really just because they really wanted to focus on the footwork almost exclusively. They just really wanted to make sure that they took all the other elements out of it. And this is what McDaniel said. He said, it's as simple as where your focus is. And when you don't watch a ball go, you don't have any attribute any emotion towards, oh, that was a good throw, or oh, that was a bad throw. You can really lean into the one thing that the footwork, that's the footwork that you're doing. And if you want to make it all, which at the quarterback position, you have 900 things that you have to think about. You want to make it that the end all be all in a short period of time. You really master it to where you're not thinking about it. So he's just saying, hey, we really want to make sure that there's no other distractions other than us drilling this footwork. And he also said, hey, I believe that doing this and really putting the time into the footwork is going to have positive consequences for our offense, being able to get the ball out to our eligibles faster in this offense.
Yeah, and I think it makes a lot of sense, right? And it also just kind of shows you, hey, part of this is about keeping the arm fresh, but a big part of it is the footwork, and it's not exactly an easy thing to change because Justin Herbert has made thousands and thousands of throws doing it one way.
Yeah.
Like they're actually trying to rewire his brain to a certain extent. And that's why this is so important. And yes, if you're actually throwing the ball, you can say you're working on your footwork, but you are thinking of all of the other things that are important when throwing a football, like the accuracy and the speed and, all of the other part of it. If you're not throwing the football, right, you can't think about those things. And that's like literally what he said. Like he's just like, that's the one way. And he also said the other important part of it, which has been a theme of this offseason, is creating those yak situations, right? And he was quoted saying, you're throwing a 5-yard out route. How can we get 12 on that? That is why these things are so important. If your footwork isn't there where you're getting to these things a little bit late, now he's getting tackled right after he catches the ball instead of creating just that tiny bit of space, which is so hard to find on an NFL field, and that turning a 5-yard gain into a 12-yard gain. Like that is what all of this is doing, right? And what he's doing is basically having his non-throwing foot forward. I've seen some breakdowns of it on Twitter from guys going through it, but basically what it is just having him ready to throw right away, as opposed to what he had been doing and done the rest of his career. And I like that they're doing that, right? I like that this seemingly is the most kind of significant change out of any of the 5 offensive coordinators have had to try to improve him and make him better, because guess what? He's great. There's not a lot to improve, and that's what Mike McDaniel is focused on, which is, hey, where is the margin where we can actually find a place to get him improved, because he's been great.
He really has, and he's been an extremely high-level performer throughout his NFL career, and so sometimes it's hard to find those places where we can, find improvement in his game, and, that's what Mike McDaniel said. He said, I'm trying to find the margins. The second I got hired here, my first day in my office, before I was even knew where the bathroom was, I was watching all of his passes from his entire career, so, with the intent of seeing where you're good at and seeing where there's a lot of meat on the bone, where we can get a lot of productivity. Maybe there's a lot for us to attack and grow, and we'll identify all those things we're trying to tweak and focus on. Then we're going to prioritize some of the things that were furthest off of the focus. So he's basically said, hey, I'm just going to, the reason why I don't just go out there and watch all the film for no reason, right? I'm doing it to see what he does well, see what he doesn't do well, and see where I can find ways to improve his game. And this is where he identified that he can do that. Obviously, it's also intentional because it's going to help marry in to the scheme that Mike McDaniel wants to run, trying to get the ball out quickly. This is part of trying to get him to, getting to that next level. And that's what the mark of a great coach is, right? We haven't seen that, and he's identified a place of growth, and they're trying to attack it.
Yeah, and like we talked about, there's not a lot of places you can improve when you've been as good as Justin Herbert has been. But I do appreciate that he is trying to change something, right? He's not just resting on the laurels of Justin Herbert will be great. He can run my offense. It's, hey, where can we find literally any advantage? And the other thing that helps is because he's able to show these guys how it's going to help him. He said, I really just showed him where I thought it'd be advantageous, and he didn't blink for a second and was excited to attack it. Not bad to give Justin Herbert, and kind of the perfectionist and freak that he is, sociopath football player at times, right? Where it's like, hey, let's give him this project and he's going to master it. And they're telling you how important it is because he's doing this instead of getting, chemistry with some of the new receivers he had. So it's obviously a very, very important. And there's one big thing in mind, right? How do we make this dude better? So when we get to the playoffs, this dude who's so obviously great can show it there as well. And he also talked about how that is part of the process and part of the plan.
Yeah, and also that, he puts a lot of that weight on trying to get Justin Herbert to that next level on himself and his coaches. He said, I put a ton of pressure on myself and the rest of the coaching staff that, this is a player that is as good as any player that I've ever worked with. How can we do things to lean into his skill set and basically improve play from a high standard of performance that he already has? That's what it takes, right? That's what it takes to just get that just little bit better, just find that small advantage, because Justin Herbert is already so talented and very, very accomplished and very good. But this is what it takes to try to get to that next level, to try to win a playoff game, to get yourself out of that stigma of he's a great regular season quarterback, but he hasn't been able to get it done in the playoffs. That's why you go get a Mike McDaniel, a guy who is so incredibly intelligent at the cutting edge of the offense, but is intentional about finding places to improve and get you to that promised land.
Yeah, and even Mike McDaniel said it like, hey, I can't get into the fine nuances of this fully without giving a little tip to all of our AFC West opponents, right, and what we're trying to do and why we're trying to get him to improve in this very specific aspect of things and why we think that can carry over into doing things they haven't done before, right? Why do you change? Because what you're doing weren't good enough.
Wasn't
and the
working.
Chargers and he have not been good enough in the playoffs. And I think a lot of this is just about the trust, right? And he said, hey, Justin Herbert trusts me so much that he's not throwing the football at practice, right? And he said partially because of his intimidation. That's how he got him not to do it. Mike McDaniels,
Yeah.
that is, right?
Of course.
But like the other thing is that another way to get over the hump is by letting him get hit less, right? Giving him more trust in the offense and actually trusting what he's going out there and doing. And that's such a big part of it. But him getting hit less will help with everything.
Oh, yeah.
If that footwork that he's doing right now lets him get rid of the ball a half a second earlier,
Great.
how much does that help him protect himself, right?
A lot.
So, like, I think that's where this kind of all intersects, where it's like, how does he get better? How does the team get better around him? How is it going to be different? They're telling us, right?
It
And all you
makes
have to
sense,
do is
too.
kind of,
It makes a lot of sense.
they're laying it out for us, and it's helping me believe in it for sure. But it definitely seems like these players are bought into it too, and Justin Herbert is kind of all in on what he needs to improve as a player, which before it seemed like how can he get better at the offense, and this is much more about how can Justin Herbert actually get better mechanically through his footwork, and I'm so glad that they're looking into it. You know who else is glad that he gets to go up against Mike McDaniel every day? Chris O'Leary's glad about that. That's definitely a lot more helpful than the defensive coordinators and the MAC he was going up against last year. And we
I'd
also
say
talked
so.
about the growth that he's seen from two players he saw as rookies and now seeing as third-year players in Cam Hart and Tarheeb. Still, we're getting into that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. Workplace chaos can show up fast, and the problem is that finding the right candidate can take a lot more time than most businesses can afford. That's where Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in. Indeed Sponsored Jobs helps you reach candidates who actually fit what you're looking for based on skills, experience, and location, and finding the right person can make all of the difference. Whether it's building a business or building a winning team, because guess what? One great addition can have a ripple effect on everyone around them. Derwin James, anyone, right? Having a great player can help everyone around them. Making a great addition to your company can help elevate those around them as well. And most importantly, you hopefully won't have to fill that spot again. So spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all your boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Go to Indeed.com/podcast and support the show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed Sponsored Jobs. It was great getting to not only hear from Mike McDaniel, but also hear from Chris O'Leary as well. And thank you guys to all the everydayers here for checking out today's show. And know that we will have 4 full shows for you guys this week because we have to do a show for every day of mandatory minicamp. It's mandatory. Not really, but it's mandatory. If we have things to talk about, we promise we'll bring them to you. And it's going to be a long layoff after this. So make sure you're back here tomorrow for the last day of Chargers mandatory minicamp. But let's start with what Chris O'Leary had to say, not about his defense, but about what his defense gets to do every day going up against Mike McDaniel, which we talk about iron sharpens iron. This seems like one of those things, but I think especially for a first-year defensive coordinator at this level in the NFL, this is really, really good for Chris O'Leary, and he said the same thing.
Yeah, he definitely did. He said just to have a resource, one that's going to challenge you every day schematically, so when we go against them in 7-on-7 or a team or whatever, like, you know, you're going to be prepared, you're going to be stressed, you're going to be challenged. And as a defense, that's all you want. You want to practice to be as hard or harder than the game. And for a first-time NFL defensive coordinator to go up against a former head coach, someone who had authored one of the best offenses in the National Football League just a few short years ago, this is invaluable time because he's going to be able to try things. He's going to be able to ask questions about how Mike McDaniel sees things, and get that resource, get that back and forth going. It's just so critical for his growth as a coordinator, right? He's still at the beginning of his journey as a defensive coordinator. So these times right here, going up against guys as talented, as intelligent, as accomplished as Mike McDaniel is only going to make Chris O'Leary a better defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and truthfully, it would have been hard to make this case last year with Roman, right? Like, if the Chargers brought back Greg Roman, I couldn't sit here and stare into this camera and tell you, hey, Chris O'Leary is going to get a really good showing from Greg Roman, to really set him up for success when the season starts. It would be really hard to make that argument, right? Obviously, the game is going to be much different, but for O'Leary to get to test his wits and try to game plan against an elite play caller at practice, that's awesome for him, right? Like, if Mike is exposing him in practice and talking smack about it, he gets to go back, right? And actually have a chance to tweak and fix things in training camp when the games don't actually count. Hopefully, we get to see him doing some joint practices as well, right? Like, I think all of these things are going to help him for when the time comes in week 1, when they're kicking things off, he's going to be ready to go and have actually, seen and got to actually test some things out against someone that we know is good because we've already actually seen him do it in Mike McDaniel. And we know he's going against Justin Herbert sometimes as well. So that helps. But it was also great to hear O'Leary talk about Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart, because these are two guys that he helped coach, he was more of a safeties coach, but as a secondary coach, he got to see these guys and where they came in as rookies, and then spent a year away and now gets to see what they're looking like going into year 3. And it's very different, right? You can tell that he's watched all these guys and knows these guys well, because if you gave the same answer for Tarheeb Still and Cam Hart, you wouldn't be understanding what they actually are as players, right? Or even as people to a certain extent. But he had different answers as to why each of these guys seems to be at a better spot now than they were as rookies.
Yeah, it was really cool to kind of hear these insights, because these are the little nuggets that you don't really get to know, right? You don't know the personality of the players unless they show them to you, right? When you get to talk to them or get to hear them speak. But he said basically, Tarheeb was a little bit more silly. Cam Hart was a bit of an overthinker, but that they've both leveled out. And he said that the way that they approach it every day, they're going to be the best version of themselves. Tarheeb, he's asking serious questions. He's engaged, but there's just a level to him that's not so up and down. You can see it. You can hear it in the way he approaches meetings. And then Cam, for me, it's like he takes more chances in practice. He makes a bad play. He's able to bounce back. And for Cam Hart, he has all of the intangibles, all of the things that you want from a corner. I truly believe that. The length, the size, the speed, and also the physicality. I like the physicality and the way he plays the game. So to see that you have Chris O'Leary, who has been here, was here before, left and came back, and was able to see the growth and the maturation of them, not only as players, but as people, I think is just going to continue to see these guys continue to ascend, which they're going to be very important, right? You look at this Chargers cornerback room, Daniel, these two guys are going to play a lot of snaps for the Chargers, and it's going to be important that they continue to take that next step if the Chargers defense wants to get to the level that we all believe that they can.
Especially because they didn't add anybody, right? So whatever they're going to get, they're getting from this room, and both these guys are going to be a huge part of that. And I do think that it was, what he's saying there, you can see not just in how he's saying, Cam silly, or Tarheeb Still silly, right? And Cam is an overthinker. Like, you see that in the way that they play as well. Like Cam Hart, last year obviously made a big leap as far as ball production goes, but only had 1 interception in 2 seasons so far in his young career, right? Yeah. It's better now that he's taking chances at practice and showing that he can go make plays and showing himself that, right? For Tarheeb Still, it's the exact opposite. He's calling him silly. I'd take that as, somewhat immaturity, right? Like, he was so kind of young and dumb that he took chances as a rookie that got him 4 interceptions as a rookie, but also led to a lot of big plays from the other team as well because of that maturity. So
feast or famine.
Tarheeb Still kind of, getting more in depth when he's saying asking better questions on the attention to detail, right? Yeah. The things that help you go from good to great. I think he's laying out, why you should be optimistic about both of these cornerbacks who, and any way you're kind of looking at it are somewhere between, corners 1 through 3, because that's where they're going to be on the depth chart when things open up, pretty much no matter what happens from here. But I do think it was also, him saying, like, for Tarheeb Still, the intentionality, the detail, the aggressiveness with which he attacks everything, to me, that's what has really improved for him, and that is awesome for his prospects in 2026. But David, I know you also, before we get out of here, liked what Chris O'Leary said about what he kind of wants the identity of this team to be, because I think it's important as well.
I do too, and I was just very happy with how clear and concise he was when he was talking about the identity. It just makes me feel like it's understood. He said the identity for us really as a group that plays together, that plays fast and violent. We got a strong brotherhood. We believe in unit strength. 11 guys playing together as one is better than 11 guys playing independently. So that's kind of our identity as a group. And then the standards just are separators, just putting them out on display, block destruction, communication, and all the things we talk about doing that on a consistent basis. So just understanding exactly what the standard is. This is how we want to play. This is the expectation of how we want to play. It's all understood. Now there's no excuses for not playing up to the standard.
When I think more than that, right? Like getting everyone going in the same direction. Like this is what made Jesse Minter's defenses great.
No
They
question.
don't have the star power, right? They weren't overwhelmingly talented where they were just, totally just dominating the people on the other side because they were just so good. It was because they all worked together, and most importantly, they help each other. Like this is a defense where guys help each other out. You are only as good as how good all 11 of you are playing at once, and when it's out of whack, you get games and starts like they had against the Texans last year, right?
Yeah.
Or the Cowboys, where if one
Colts.
person's kind of out of place, you just, well, that was mostly like the whole game, but yeah, like you when one thing's out of whack, it could be 240+ yard touchdowns on the other team's first drives, right? When it's a well-oiled machine, you get 2 top 10 defenses in back-to-back years. That's why this is so important. Like this is a defense about communication and selflessness. Even last year when things weren't going the right way, and things were kind of spiraling a little bit mid-season, you heard Jesse Minter say, hey, guys are trying to do a little bit too much. You have to trust the process. You have to play together. And if you do, you can be better than the sum of your parts, which is exactly what the Chargers asked of Jesse Minter by not adding a ton of premium resources to the defensive side, and what they're going to ask of Chris O'Leary again in 2026. And how successful this defense is going to be is not going to be about how one person plays. It's going to be how well they all play together, because that's how you can be special, and how Chris O'Leary in particular can help replicate some of the great things that we saw under Jesse Minter in his own way. But that is going to wrap things up for today's show. We're going to be back with you guys tomorrow with what happens and who's talking at mandatory minicamp day 3 after what you guys are hearing today as we're recording this on Wednesday night. So to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcasts from, as well as finding the show every day on all of our social media at Locked On LAC on Twitter, at Locked On Chargers on Instagram, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. If you want an ad-free audio version of the show, you can get that now in the Locked On Everydayer Club, which you can find out about in the show notes, where you get an ad-free audio version of the show every day, and also exclusive access to our Locked On Chargers Discord channel as well. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow from whatever happens at Chargers mandatory minicamp day 3. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.